Snow fell softly on the Dresden Striezelmarkt as Ho-Jin pulled her thick wool scarf tighter around her neck. The old clock tower nearby showed 4:30 p.m., but the winter sky was already growing dark. Hundreds of tiny lights twinkled above the market stalls, making everything look magical. Ho-Jin loved working at her aunt's glühwein stand. The sweet smell of warm wine mixed with cinnamon and oranges made her feel happy, even on the coldest days. She watched the steam rise from the big brass pot where the wine was warming. Today felt different somehow, but she couldn't explain why. "One glühwein, please," said a quiet voice. Ho-Jin looked up and saw a tall person wearing a silver-gray winter coat. Something about the visitor seemed strange. Their movements were too smooth, like water flowing in a stream. The stranger's face was pleasant, but didn't show any expression when the cold wind blew. "Of course. Would you like the traditional mix or the cherry flavor?" Ho-Jin asked with a smile. The visitor tilted their head slightly. "I would like to try the one that makes the most steam. The rising vapor patterns are fascinating." Ho-Jin thought this was an unusual way to order a drink, but she was used to tourists asking strange questions. She reached for a red ceramic mug with painted snowflakes. "The traditional mix is the hottest. We make it the same way they did hundreds of years ago." As she poured the deep red wine, more steam rose into the cold air. The stranger watched with complete focus, like a scientist studying something important. Their eyes followed every curl of steam until it disappeared. "Here you are," Ho-Jin said, handing over the mug. "Be careful, it's very hot." The visitor took the mug and immediately lifted it close to their face. Ho-Jin expected them to blow on it to cool it down, like everyone else did. Instead, they just watched the steam, completely still. More customers came to the stand, and Ho-Jin stayed busy serving them. But she kept noticing the strange visitor, who hadn't moved from their spot or taken a single sip. They just held the mug, studying the steam with great interest. After serving an elderly couple, Ho-Jin looked back at the visitor. "Is everything okay with your glühwein?" "The heat transfer process is remarkable," they said. "On my home country, we don't have beverages that produce such interesting thermal patterns." Ho-Jin noticed they had almost said home world instead of home country. She remembered all the science fiction books she loved to read. Could it be possible? She looked more carefully at the visitor's perfect posture and the way their coats seemed to shift colors slightly in different lights. "I'm Ho-Jin," she said carefully. "Welcome to Dresden. What should I call you?" The visitor was quiet for a moment, as if thinking very hard about the question. "You may call me Taiho. That would be appropriate for this region." Just then, a group of children ran past the stand, laughing and waving sparklers in the air. Taiho jumped slightly, and for a second, Ho-Jin saw their eyes reflect the light in a way that human eyes definitely didn't. She smiled and pretended not to notice. "First time at a Christmas market, Taiho." "Yes, I am here to study traditional winter celebrations. There is much I don't understand." Ho-Jin looked at the market around them. The family sharing pretzels, friends laughing over hot drinks, old couples walking arm in arm past stands filled with handmade crafts. Maybe this visitor had chosen the perfect place to learn about human traditions. "Well," she said, "you're in luck. This is the oldest Christmas market in Germany, and I happen to know all about it." Taiho finally took a small sip of the glühwein. Their eyes widened slightly. "This creates an unusual sensation. Pleasant, but unusual. I would very much like to learn more." Ho-Jin smiled. This was going to be an interesting evening at the market. Taiho walked slowly through the market, keeping a careful distance from the crowds of happy shoppers. The lights and sounds were almost too much for his enhanced senses. Back on his home planet, everything was ordered and quiet. Here, it was beautifully chaotic. He touched the small device hidden in his coat pocket. It looked like a normal phone, but was actually a recorder for his mission notes. As an anthropological observer from the Centauri Alliance, his job was to study Earth's winter celebrations. His superiors had chosen Germany's oldest Christmas market as the perfect place to start. Observation Day 1. He whispered into the device. Humans gather in large numbers despite the cold. They seem to find comfort in this shared discomfort. The hot wine served by subject He-Jin appears to be a social catalyst. He paused his recording when he noticed a small group watching a puppet show. The children sat on wooden benches, their faces full of wonder as wooden figures danced and told stories. Their parents stood behind them, smiling and taking pictures. Most interesting, he continued recording. They create artificial life forms for entertainment, yet the humans clearly know these are not real. They choose to imagine together. This shared imagination appears important to their social bonds. The smell of fresh bread caught his attention. Taiho's species didn't need to eat often, but the scent made him curious. He walked to a stall where a man was pulling large twisted pretzels from an oven. "Would you like one?" the baker asked with a friendly smile. "They're still warm." Taiho nodded, trying to copy how he had seen others interact. He handed over some money and received a pretzel wrapped in paper. The warmth against his fingers was pleasant. He took a small bite, and his eyes widened. His species had given up traditional cooking centuries ago, preferring efficient nutrient pills. This was different. It was inefficient, unnecessary, and absolutely wonderful. "Enjoying your pretzel?" Taiho turned to find He-Jin standing nearby. She had finished her shift at the glühwein stand and changed into a warm red coat. "The temperature and texture combination is unexpected," he said carefully. "Why do humans put so much effort into food preparation when simple nutrition would be sufficient?" He-Jin laughed. "Because food isn't just about staying alive. It's about enjoying life." She pointed to a family sharing a large pretzel. "See how happy they are. That's what these markets are all about." Taiho made another recording note mentally. Humans value emotional satisfaction over efficiency. This requires further study. "Would you like to see more?" He-Jin asked. "I could show you around. There's so much to experience here." Taiho hesitated. His mission guidelines said to observe from a distance. But how could he understand human celebrations without participating? Besides, He-Jin had already noticed he was different and didn't seem afraid. "Yes," he decided. "I would like to learn more about these traditions." As they walked, He-Jin pointed out different stalls and explained their significance. Taiho noticed how her face lit up when she talked about her favorite childhood memories of the market. Final note for today. He whispered into his device when He-Jin stopped to greet a friend. These markets appear to serve as memory storage locations for humans. They return year after year, adding new experiences while preserving old ones. Perhaps this is what my people lost when we chose progress over tradition. He looked at the half-eaten pretzel in his hand and made a decision. Sometimes, the best way to understand something was to experience it fully. He would participate in these celebrations, not just observe them. His superiors might not approve, but how else could he truly understand what made humans so uniquely resilient and joyful? He-Jin turned back to him with a smile. "Ready to try some roasted chestnuts? They're a must-have at any Christmas market." Taiho nodded, already looking forward to another new experience. "I am ready to learn." The wooden ornament looked so real that Taiho couldn't resist. While He-Jin was buying chestnuts, he picked up what appeared to be a perfectly carved gingerbread cookie from a craft stall. Without hesitation, he took a large bite. The sound of teeth meeting hard wood made He-Jin turn around quickly. Her eyes went wide as she saw Taiho standing there, looking confused, with a wooden ornament in his mouth. "Oh no!" She rushed over, trying not to laugh. "That's not real food. It's a decoration made of wood." Taiho removed the ornament and studied it carefully. "But it looks exactly like the edible version. Why would humans create non-edible copies of food items?" The old woman running the craft stall looked concerned. He-Jin quickly paid her for the now slightly damaged ornament and led Taiho away from the stall. Once they were in a quiet corner of the market, He-Jin couldn't hold back her laughter anymore. I'm sorry, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. But you should have seen your face. I guess you're really not from around here, are you? Tai-ho touched the small device in his pocket. This was a moment of decision. His mission rules said not to reveal his true identity, but He-Jin had been kind, and she had already noticed he was different. No, he said quietly. I am not from Earth at all. He-Jin nodded, surprisingly calm. I thought so. The way you move is different, and your eyes reflect light in an unusual way. Plus, most people know not to eat wooden ornaments. She held up the bag of chestnuts she had bought. Would you like to try some real food? These are actually meant to be eaten. Tai-ho accepted a warm chestnut. On my world, we stopped preparing food like this long ago. Everything is processed into simple nutrition tablets. We thought it was more efficient. And now you're here to study our Christmas markets. He-Jin asked, offering him another chestnut. Why? My people have lost something, Tai-ho explained. We advanced our technology and improved our lives in many ways. But we no longer celebrate or gather together like this. The Centauri Alliance wants to understand why humans still value these traditions. He-Jin looked around at the market. Children were decorating gingerbread hearts at one stall. An old couple shared a cup of hot chocolate at another. Somewhere, a choir began singing traditional carols. Would you like me to show you? She asked. Not just as an observer, but as a participant. I think the only way to really understand these traditions is to experience them. Tai-ho considered her offer. That would be helpful. But I should warn you. I might try to eat more decorations. He-Jin laughed again. Don't worry. I'll make sure you only eat the real food. Come on, let's start with the carol singers. Music is a big part of Christmas traditions. As they walked toward the singing, Tai-ho made a mental note. Humans use humor to make others feel comfortable, even when dealing with strange situations. This ability to find joy in unexpected moments might be key to understanding their resilience. Also, he added quietly, wooden cookies are not recommended for consumption. He-Jin heard him and smiled. You're learning already. Now wait until you try the real gingerbread. I promise it tastes much better than the wooden version. Together, they joined the crowd gathering around the carol singers, ready for the next lesson in Earth's Christmas traditions. The carol singers finished their songs, and He-Jin noticed Tai-ho's hands were shaking slightly. The temperature had dropped as evening approached, and snowflakes were falling more heavily now. Are you cold? She asked. Let's get you something warm to eat. She led him to a small stall where an old baker was selling fresh Stollen, a traditional German Christmas bread. The sweet smell of dried fruits and powdered sugar filled the air. Steam rose from the freshly baked loaves, creating warm clouds in the cold air. This bread has been made the same way for hundreds of years, He-Jin explained as she bought a slice. Try it while it's still warm. Tai-ho held the warm bread in his hands first, appreciating the heat. Then he took a careful bite. His eyes widened as the flavors mixed in his mouth. There are so many different tastes at once, he said. Sweet, but also complex. How do humans create such combinations? He-Jin smiled. Years of tradition. Each family has its own recipe. Some add more almonds, others use different fruits. Every piece tells a story. A group of children ran past them, heading toward the carousel in the center of the market. The old wooden horses moved up and down as cheerful music played. Colored lights reflected off the fresh snow, creating rainbow patterns. Would you like to try the carousel? He-Jin asked. Tai-ho looked uncertain. Is it not just for young humans? Not at all. Everyone can enjoy it. It's part of the experience. After some gentle persuasion, Tai-ho found himself sitting on a painted wooden horse. As the carousel began to move, he gripped the pole tightly. But soon, he relaxed and began to enjoy the motion and the music. This is pleasant, he said, surprising himself. It serves no practical purpose, yet it creates a feeling of joy. He-Jin, riding on the horse next to him, nodded. That's what makes it special. Not everything needs a practical purpose. Sometimes things exist just to make us happy. After the ride, they walked to a stall selling roasted chestnuts. The seller was turning them in a large pan over hot coals, and the smell made Tai-ho think of warmth and comfort. He touched his recording device, making notes. Humans create experiences that engage all senses at once. The smell of food, the sound of music, the sight of lights, the feeling of warmth. Everything works together to create what they call atmosphere. I think I'm beginning to understand, he said to He-jin. These markets are not just about buying things or eating food. They're about experiencing everything together. Exactly, He-jin said, offering him a hot chestnut. It's about creating memories and sharing moments. Even the cold weather helps. It makes the warm food and drinks taste better and brings people closer together. Tai-ho looked at the scene around them. Families huddled close, sharing treats and laughing. Friends walked arm in arm, their breath making clouds in the cold air. Everyone seemed connected, even strangers exchanging smiles as they passed. On my world, he said quietly, we thought we were advancing by removing the need for such gatherings. But now I wonder if we lost something important. He-jin touched his arm gently. It's never too late to learn new ways of living. Even old traditions were new once. Tai-ho nodded, feeling the warmth inside that had nothing to do with the hot chestnuts or the warm stollen. It was a different kind of warmth, one he was just beginning to understand. Evening had settled fully over the Dresden market now. The snow-covered stalls glowed with hundreds of tiny lights, creating a magical scene. He-jin looked at her watch and smiled. It was time to introduce Tai-ho to someone special. There's someone I want you to meet, she said, leading him through the crowded market. They stopped at a small wooden stall filled with handmade crafts. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair, carefully arranging wooden ornaments. Grandmother, He-jin called out. The woman looked up and smiled warmly. This is my grandmother, Jae-won, He-jin told Tai-ho. She has been selling crafts at this market for 40 years. She knows everything about its history. Jae-won studied Tai-ho with wise eyes. Welcome to my stall, she said kindly. You are not from around here, are you? Tai-ho glanced at He-jin, who nodded encouragingly. No, he admitted. I am from very far away. I am here to learn about your traditions. Jae-won nodded, as if this explained everything. She reached under her counter and brought out 3 cups of hot tea. Then sit with me for a while. Every tradition has a story, and every story needs time to tell. They sat on wooden stools behind the stall, where Jae-won had created a small warm space with blankets and cushions. The smell of pine and cinnamon filled the air from the wreaths hanging above them. I first came to this market as a young woman, Jae-won began, sipping her tea. I had just moved to Germany, and everything was new and strange. But the market welcomed me, just as it welcomes everyone. Tai-ho listened carefully as Jae-won told stories about the market through the years. She spoke about harsh winters when people shared their warmth, about children who grew up to bring their own children, about traditions passed down through generations. Look there, she said, pointing to a young couple sharing a pretzel. 20 years ago, they were children buying sweets at my stall. Now they bring their own little ones. The market is like a great wheel, always turning, always connecting people. He-jin watched as Tai-ho took notes on his device. She noticed how his usual stiff posture had relaxed as he listened to her grandmother's stories. But how do you keep these traditions alive? Tai-ho asked. In my home, we thought it was better to move forward, to leave old ways behind. Jae-won smiled gently. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting the past. Each generation adds something new while keeping what's precious from before. Like this ornament. She picked up a wooden star. The design is hundreds of years old, but we paint it with modern colors. The old and new work together. As if to prove her point, The sound of traditional carols mixed with children's laughter floated through the air. Above them, modern LED lights twinkled alongside old-fashioned candles. "You see," Jaiwan said, patting Taiho's hand. "Progress doesn't have to mean losing what makes us human." Taiho looked at his device, then slowly put it away. Some things, he realized, couldn't be recorded in notes or data. They had to be felt and remembered. "Thank you," he said softly. "I think I understand better now." Jaiwan smiled and poured more tea. "Stay a while longer. The night is still young, and there are more stories to tell." After leaving Jaiwan's stall, Hejin and Taiho walked through the market together. The evening crowd had grown larger, and families filled every corner of the square. Children ran between the stalls, their excitement adding to the festive atmosphere. Near the large Christmas tree in the center of the market, a small group of children were making ornaments at a craft table. Their small hands carefully painted wooden shapes and added glitter to paper stars. Parents watched proudly as their children created simple but beautiful decorations. One little girl with bright red mittens worked especially hard on her ornament. She had painted a wooden star with careful strokes, adding small dots of gold paint around the edges. Her face showed complete concentration as she lifted her finished work to show her mother. Then something unexpected happened. As the girl turned to hang her ornament on the nearby tree, she slipped on a patch of ice. The precious star flew from her hands, spinning through the air toward the hard ground. Without thinking, Taiho moved. His reflexes, far quicker than any human's, allowed him to catch the ornament just inches from the ground. The movement was so fast that most people didn't even notice anything unusual. But Hejin saw, and she held her breath. The little girl looked up at the tall stranger holding her ornament. Instead of being scared by his unusual appearance or his incredible speed, she simply smiled. "Thank you," she said in a clear voice. "You saved my star." Taiho carefully handed the ornament back to her. For a moment, he felt something he had never experienced before, a warm feeling in his chest that had nothing to do with temperature or physical comfort. The child's genuine smile and simple gratitude touched something deep inside him. "You are welcome," he said softly. The girl nodded and carefully hung her star on a low branch of the Christmas tree. Her mother mouthed a silent "thank you" to Taiho before they moved away into the crowd. Hejin touched his arm gently. "Are you all right?" That was quite a catch. Taiho looked at his hands, then back at the little girl's star now hanging safely on the tree. "I feel strange. When she smiled at me, something happened. I felt warm inside, but not from temperature." "Is this what you call emotion?" "Yes," Hejin said. "That's exactly what it is. Emotions are what make these celebrations special. They connect us to each other. My people believe we have evolved beyond emotions," Taiho said quietly. "We think they make us weak and inefficient. But that moment, saving her ornament and seeing her happiness, it felt important. It felt right." They walked to a quiet corner of the market. Taiho reached for his recording device but stopped. How could he explain this feeling to his superiors? How could he describe the way a child's smile had made him question everything he believed about progress and evolution? "Perhaps," he said finally, "we were wrong about emotions. Perhaps feeling things deeply doesn't make us weak. Perhaps it makes us stronger in ways we don't understand." Hejin smiled. "That's a very human thought, Taiho." "Yes," he agreed, looking at the twinkling lights and the happy faces around them. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing to be." The clock on the old church tower showed 9 in the evening. Most families had gone home, but many stalls remained open, their lights creating warm circles in the gentle snowfall. Hejin and Taiho returned to Jaiwan's craft stall, where the elderly woman was beginning to pack away her items for the night. "Grandmother," Hejin said, "may I use your workbench for a few minutes? I would like to make something." Jaiwan nodded with understanding in her eyes. She cleared a space at her small wooden workbench, where she had been creating ornaments all day. Hejin sat down and began to work with careful hands. Taiho watched as she selected a piece of smooth pine wood and began to shape it with simple tools. Her movements were precise and thoughtful. As she worked, she explained each step to him. In the old days, she said, people didn't buy all their Christmas decorations from stores. They made them by hand, putting their heart into each piece. That made the gifts special. After 30 minutes of careful work, Ho-Jin held up her creation. It was a simple but beautiful wooden star, similar to the one the little girl had almost dropped earlier. But this one was different. Ho-Jin had carved delicate patterns into its surface that looked like swirling steam, remembering how fascinated Taiho had been by the rising steam from the glove wine. "This is for you," she said, placing it in his hands, "to remember your first Christmas market." Taiho held the star carefully, touching the carved patterns with gentle fingers. No one had ever made anything by hand for him before. On his world, everything was created by machines. He paused, feeling that warm sensation in his chest again. "I have something for you as well." From his coat pocket, he removed a small crystal. It was unlike anything Ho-Jin had ever seen. As he held it under the market lights, it caught the glow and transformed it into dancing patterns of color that moved like the northern lights. "This is from my home," he explained. "We use these crystals to store information, but this one is special. It captures light and reflects it in new ways. I think it belongs here, where there is so much beautiful light to capture." Ho-Jin took the crystal carefully. As she moved it, the lights from the market danced inside it, creating a miniature light show in her hands. Even Jae-won leaned forward to admire its beauty. "Our worlds are very different," Taiho said softly, "but perhaps we can learn from each other. You have taught me about warmth and tradition. Please accept this small piece of my world in return." Jae-won stepped forward and placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "This is what the market has always been about," she said. "People coming together, sharing what makes them special, learning from each other, even if those people come from much farther away than we ever imagined." Ho-Jin carefully wrapped the crystal in soft cloth and put it in her pocket. Taiho did the same with his wooden star. Outside the stall, the snow continued to fall softly, and the market lights glowed warm and bright against the dark sky. The clock struck 10, and the last visitors were leaving the Christmas market. Snowflakes danced in the light of the street lamps as vendors closed their stalls for the night. Taiho stood near the market entrance, knowing it was time to complete his mission report to the Centauri Alliance. He took out his recording device and began speaking softly. "Final report on Earth's winter celebrations. After careful study of the Dresden Christmas market, I must revise our previous understanding of human traditions." Ho-Jin and Jae-won stood nearby, watching as he made his report. The wooden star Ho-Jin had made rested safely in his coat pocket, its weight a reminder of everything he had learned. "The success of humanity does not come from abandoning their traditions," he continued. "Instead, their strength lies in how they keep old customs while embracing new ways. They understand something we have forgotten, that progress does not require us to leave behind what makes us who we are." He paused, touching the star in his pocket. "The Christmas market is not simply a place of commerce or entertainment. It is a living connection between past and present. Here, humans share warmth in the cold, find joy in simple things, and create bonds that cross all boundaries, even those between worlds." Then Taiho did something unprecedented in the history of Centauri Alliance reports. He added a personal request. "I recommend we send a formal delegation to next year's Christmas market, not to study the humans, but to learn from them, to remember what we lost when we chose efficiency over emotion, progress over tradition." Ho-Jin stepped forward as he finished his report. "Will they agree?" she asked. "I do not know," Taiho admitted, "but I think they need to experience this for themselves. Some things cannot be understood through data alone." 1 year later, the Dresden Christmas market opened with some unusual visitors. A small group of tall figures in silver-gray coats moved carefully through the market, their eyes wide with wonder at the lights and sounds. They carried special crystals that captured the market's glow, and in return, they shared small pieces of their own world with the curious humans who welcomed them. At the glue wine stand, Ho-Jin served hot drinks to visitors from Earth and beyond. The crystal Taeho had given her hung above her stall, its dancing lights drawing smiles from everyone who passed by. Jaiwon's craft stall now featured both traditional wooden ornaments and beautiful items that combined earth crafts with Centauri crystal work. She taught both humans and aliens how to carve simple decorations, sharing stories as they worked together. And Taeho, who had chosen to become the official liaison between Earth's Christmas markets and the Centauri Alliance, stood in the center of it all. He watched as humans and aliens shared food, exchanged gifts, and created new traditions together. Perhaps, he thought, holding his wooden star and watching the snowfall, this is how the universe should be. Not different worlds staying apart, but all of us learning from each other, sharing our warmth in the cold of winter. Around him, the market glowed with lights both old and new, and the sound of laughter and joy filled the air, a sound that now belonged to all worlds, not just one.